Coffee, Calm and Connection is about being human. It's about you choosing to prioritize your well-being, putting the time in to strengthen your resilience to adversity, and being part of a community that holds you accountable and offers support when the going gets tough. Our podcasts bring expert insight and real-life experiences together for you to enjoy and learn what it is that makes us human and how to work with it. Good morning, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Coffee Calm Connection. I'm really excited to hear a little bit about who you are, what your journey has been. And I know the whole sort of mindfulness, meditation, self-development movement is something that you've been dipping your toe in over the last couple of years. So do you want to tell us about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm Jennifer. I'm 35, got 2 children, married. Been in insurance for 17 years, currently working head office for NIG. Really enjoy my job. It's very varied and different. I live in Peterborough. Like you say, I've recently started down the meditation and mindfulness journey. I've got a toddler who's turning 2 tomorrow, and I did hypnobirthing with him when I was pregnant, and that seemed to really help. I can be quite an impatient person sometimes, and that really helped calm me and just see things from a different perspective. And I just realised how powerful the mind can actually be. And so I'm really interested in following up my journey and developing a little bit more.
Do you know, I think that's really interesting as well, because I tried hypnobirthing and got nowhere with it when I was pregnant with my 3. Was it the fact that you were pregnant and hypnobirthing is a good thing to do? Was there any other reason that kind of drew you to that sort of way of life, if it's the right thing to say?
Just to try and be a bit more, less stressed was the main reason, because from my first child, he's a lot older, he's 17, but I just remember I was always so stressed at the time, and I didn't want to be that way with the second one. So I thought I need to take it from a different angle. And I really wanted a natural birth. I wanted a water birth, which I didn't manage with my first. So that was kind of a driver as well, because I thought that should hopefully help with that. And to begin with, the thought of, just breathe, and it's all about the breathing and all these positive affirmations that come out of it to begin with, it was a bit like, oh, is that, is this really true? Is that really going to happen? Can I really focus that much? And can it really make that much of a difference? But I found that it really did.
Did you get your natural birth?
I did, yes. And it was the most amazing. Obviously, it was painful, but it was the most amazing birth story ever. I think whenever I tell people, they're so jealous, because I went into labour at home, and I like to be by myself. So I was kind of, I ran the bath. I was in the bathroom by myself, went in the bath for a couple of hours, woke, I think that was about 1 o'clock it started. And then I woke my husband up at 5, told him, we're on, this is it. And he went then like a madman running around the house trying to get everything ready. And then my waters broke at 5:30, and we drove to the hospital. I got in the water birthing pool, and it was all dark and like mood lighting and things like that. So it was so calming. Had a bit of gas and air, and he was born at 6:45. And I literally think I only had to push a couple of times, but it was really amazing. So yeah, it was. I couldn't believe it afterwards. I just thought that went exactly to plan. So yeah, I'm so lucky. And I think the hypnobirthing really did work. Just the breathing. I think when you've got your contractions and the breathing, it really did make such a difference.
That's quite a powerful experience early on in your journey. That's like consolidated.
Yeah,
how powerful this kind of stuff can be. I did last week. I did my own made-up yoga routine in the morning, and all the kids were in bed, husband was in bed, and I thought, my back's a bit sore. I've got a stressful day at work today. I'm just going to take 10 minutes. And I did all the breathing and blah, blah, blah. And I felt much better for it. And then this morning, I was like, my back's a bit sore. I've got a big day, lots of stuff happening. I'm going to do a bit of yoga again. But I did it whilst yelling, can you just go and clean your teeth, please? Can somebody get the
same effect?
No. And just that the mind wasn't in the right place. So I finished the yoga session and was like, oh, that didn't make any difference. It's so one of the things you said was you didn't want to be as stressed with your second as you were with your first. Is this purely around motherhood? Is it around general day-to-day stresses, for example, from work? Is it a combination of the two? Tell me a little bit about how stress manifests in you and what you think the reasoning behind it was.
I think some of it's obviously maybe because I've got older as well, so I'm a little bit more chilled anyway. But I think I kind of feel like I've lived two different lives so far. So I was born in Doncaster and lived there, and then moved here when I met my husband, and now live in Peterborough. And I was younger when I had my first child and lived in Doncaster, and it kind of feels like you're in a different, because the area is so different and the society is very different. And then I kind of got away from that and moved here, and I kind of felt like it was just such a better environment to be in. And I think because of that, I wasn't going out as much with friends, I wasn't drinking as much, and I had more time wanting to just be at home in pajamas and things like that. So I think all that kind of helped. I didn't feel like I was missing out on as much than I did when I was younger with my first child. So it was more naturally more less stressful, I think, with the second one. But day-to-day life, it's kind of living here. I don't have many friends here because I haven't met that many people. I've got a couple, but compared to when I used to live in Doncaster, all my old friends are there, but they're all living the life that I used to live, and you kind of grow out of it. So it's hard to then go back and kind of like feel like you belong there anymore, if you see what I mean. And then family, they all live in Doncaster as well, so it can feel a bit lonely living here sometimes. And I think that's what I maybe struggle with the most. And my husband, he's self-employed, he works long hours. So I'm left at home with the children most of the time, which can be quite tricky. So yeah, I just felt like I probably needed to be more centered, more calm, just to be able to deal with everything on my own. Like housework, that's a big one. My husband's quite, probably the wrong thing to say, but he's quite set in the 1940s. So it's kind of like the woman does the cleaning and the cooking, and the man does all the hard work and, you know, all the labouring and the fixing things and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I do struggle with that sometimes. I think actually trying to keep on top of the housework at the same time as raising the children and working myself as well. So yeah, that can all feel a bit much sometimes.
I know that
Yeah.
feeling very, very well. How
Yeah.
have you managed, talking about sort of leaving the old life, the family and the friends and the sort of big network, and then COVID's come along for the last 12, 14 months? How's that affected your sort of mental health?
See, I've lived in Peterborough now for probably 8 years ish. So the COVID thing, it didn't really affect me in that kind of sense. I didn't feel the loss in that way because I wasn't really used to seeing that many people anymore anyway. But it was a big change because I used to work from home maybe one day a week or a couple of days maybe, whereas now I work here full time. So then it does get quite lonely sometimes because you don't see anybody. If my husband's at work all day, my mum is classed as being in a vulnerable category. She actually moved to Peterborough a couple of years ago, so I do have her here, but she has a holiday home that she goes to quite a lot. So through the summer months and things like that, I don't really get to see her as much. But that's been the hardest bit because she's had to be on her own, because she's had to self-isolate, and she hasn't been able to see my children, which has been quite tricky. So I think that's been the hardest. And the first lockdown, my husband actually had to stop working, and he's not very good if he's not at work. His whole drive is work, and he's very much the provider and wants to earn the money. And I think if he's not doing that, he finds it a real struggle. So that was quite hard to begin with because he was at home when he wasn't used to being at home, and we were arguing quite a lot over stupid things. Yeah, and he didn't settle into it very well at all, which made it a lot worse. And I was quite glad when he went back to work.
Do you know, I've heard a few people have had that very same experience. All of a sudden, the home dynamics changed. And it's not just changed because more people are in the home every day, all day, but it's changed because the home is now also the work environment and the home. So the separation's not there. So I've heard a few people say that was quite difficult. What is it in you that makes you recognize that you're starting to slump, whether it's because of, you know, loneliness or stress or whatever it might be?
So the things I like, how it manifests in me, I suppose, is I do get a lot more impatient. I can feel myself just snapping and being irritable, picking up on things that I probably wouldn't pick up on usually, and, you know, making a point out of it where I wasn't usually, and just feeling I did feel quite a lot of resentment towards my husband at times throughout COVID. So that was one of the ways that it manifested. And I'm a bit of a crier sometimes. I'm quite emotional, so that happens. And sometimes I get anxiety. It all started, I lost my dad 6 years ago. And at the time, I've got asthma as well. So it kind of confused the two things, but I was getting like a real feeling of pressure on my windpipe, and it felt like somebody was literally standing on me and I couldn't breathe properly. And I went to the doctors, and they were like, "Oh, it's anxiety." And I was like, no, I don't, I don't suffer with things like that. I'm quite a strong-headed person. I don't think that would affect me in that way. It must be related to my asthma or something like that. And I went away not really believing him. And then it kind of went away on its own. And a year later, it came back. And I actually sat there, did some deep breathing, and it actually seemed to get better. And I thought, oh my goodness, it actually is anxiety. So yeah, I would never have thought I would have been the type of person that would suffer from something like that. But yeah, I suppose it shows in your body in all kind of different ways.
Through all the work that we've been doing in the sort of development of CCC and sort of my own self-development over the last 5 years, one thing has struck me so strongly, and that is how an anxiety or panic attack manifests physiologically. So the actual physical response that somebody has to an anxiety attack. And I was talking to someone a few years ago, and she had, and I've heard this from several people, she actually ended up calling an ambulance out because genuinely thought she was having a heart attack. And when they got to her, it was a panic attack and she was mortified. But
Yeah.
that level of pain in that moment. And another thing you've just said that I find really interesting is, would never have thought you were that type of person. And I'm sure you're probably the same. The more I'm learning, the more I'm realizing everybody's that type of person. It's just whether or not you are picking up on the emotional signals your body's trying to tell you that suggests, this is where I'm at now and it's bad times. It's so interesting when you start to delve into the physiological impact and what's actually happening in your brain, like what neural pathways are firing and all of this interesting stuff.
I do find it very interesting. We do have in my family, there is quite a few people who do suffer with mental health conditions. And years ago, I was kind of quite negative on the idea, and I just thought they were just selfish people, and I didn't really understand it, and I didn't probably want to understand it at the time because I didn't accept their behavior and what they were doing and why they were doing it. And it's only over the last couple of years that I've kind of sat there and thought, this is real. People do suffer with mental health issues. It's not just people wanting to get an easy ride or an excuse for their behavior. It must be something that is in their mind that, like you say, it's cognitive behavior and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I am a lot more patient. Like my sister, she's I think she's got a personality disorder, and her daughter's very similar in her mannerisms and the way that she acts. So I think she also has it. But it's took me a long time to kind of understand why does she act like that? Why does she treat us that way? Why is it like that? And I still don't understand it, but I just feel like I'm so much more patient now and understanding, and rather than trying to fix everything all the time, I'm kind of more, I'll listen to her and just be there and not expect too much, I think is the way that I kind of deal with it. But yeah, I'm the youngest.
Older?
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 7 siblings. Yeah, three with my dad's, and 7 with my dad's, 4 with my mum, and dad. And yeah, when we were quite a close family, and then when dad passed away, it kind of just fractured the whole setup. And it was a very stressful time, actually. There was lots of things going on. My mum wanted to sell the house. My sister wasn't happy about it, and there was lots of drama at the time. And it was just, I think that's took quite a lot of time for everybody to try and build bridges. But my dad always used to say that I was the most sensible and headed one out of all the siblings. And I think I would like to, like you say, you want to understand things. I would like to understand why I kind of act a little differently than my other siblings. So it would be nice to get a better understanding. But I think in my family, everybody always turns to drink. And that's really the bad thing. Nobody wants to talk about anything unless they've had a drink. And then it's obviously a negative situation and a negative conversation. But I probably used to be like that when I was younger, but I've kind of learned that's not the way to be. And that probably went hand in hand with moving out of where I used to live and moving here. So yeah. I think that can be quite a bad one. And I did go on a webinar a few weeks ago, and there were a woman on there, she was actually a doctor, and she said that drink doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a drink problem for drink to be a problem. And there was apparently quite a few different books out there. And I thought that really resonated with me, because my family are always saying, oh, I don't have a drink problem, I don't have a drink problem. But I think they don't have a drink problem, but drink is a problem for them, but they don't see the link and they won't accept that that's part of it. Whereas I think that is probably one step that a lot of people maybe need to see, because that's probably a common theme.
I hear what you're saying there, and I cannot tell you how much everything you've just said resonates with parts of my life. So borderline personality disorder is something we have experience of in our family, as is alcohol dependency, whether it is the like jokey middle-class alcoholic, or whether it is, it's never full-blown paper bag in the morning. But I like what you said there. You don't have to have a drink problem for a drink to be a problem is a really interesting thing. And let me just tell you what I'm doing at the moment. So 2021 for me is a teetotal year. And I'm not going to lie, when Boris announced on the 4th or 5th of January that we were going back to homeschooling, I almost caved, but I haven't. Yeah. And it will be a teetotal year for me. And that is because, like you, I have to prove to myself that, because, there's various forms of alcoholism or just addictive personalities in my wider family, I have to prove to myself that I'm not in any way addicted, because I think addiction comes in all kinds of levels.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree.
How does work play into your life? I know you're very happy in your job, and that's fabulous. Is it quite a high stress job? Is it a great team? Have you ever had experience of high stress and maybe perhaps some difficult relationships within the workplace?
I think when I first started, I was a working call centre kind of job. So that was not high pressure as such, but the people that you worked with, sometimes it wasn't a very good environment. People weren't very nice to each other. So that wasn't a great atmosphere. And but in the job I'm in now, I think in some roles you're not treated like an adult in some of them, and they expect you to do certain work and hit certain figures, but they don't treat you with the respect that you need and that you deserve, or give you the freedom to do your job. And I have found that in past roles, but in the role that I'm in now, my manager is amazing. He's so understanding and flexible, and it just makes you feel like somebody actually cares about the work that you do, which in turn makes you feel like you want to actually do really good work. I think my job, it goes from quite relaxing and just pottering on and doing the work, to then, oh, you've got a deadline, we've got to hit this, and then it's all all guns blazing, and then you feel the pressure. But again, you never feel like you're out of your depth with it, because your manager's always happy to have a discussion, help out where possible, and everybody's quite good at helping out each other and being supportive. So I am quite lucky, I think, in the job that I've got now. I do still feel the pressure sometimes of the workload, or just feeling like I'm not good enough for the job, like maybe the job that I'm doing, I don't deserve it, or I'm not going to do it good enough, and that kind of thing. So I think they all kind of resonate with me sometimes.
The age-old imposter syndrome.
Yes.
What actually do you do in NIG?
So I'm a head office underwriter in commercial.
Fabulous. So very technical as opposed to client facing or sales role. So what sort of stresses do you have in the underwriting position? When you say it gets pressured, what happens?
So with the pressure, it's just kind of like you've got to hit a deadline, and you've got so much more work you've got to do to be able to get to that point. So I think that's the pressure cooker part. And then the bit where you feel like you're not good enough for the job or something is, you feel like if you spoke to my husband, he'd be like, oh, insurance, it's not that much of a big deal. I don't think he sees the bigger picture, because we kind of make decisions on the wider product, and you just think, and also individual policies that come through as referrals to us, but you just think if you make the wrong decision, that could be £1 million claim on your books, and it could mean that person's not insured, or they haven't understood the cover as such. So I think they're the worries. That's the bit where you think, oh, am I making the right decision, by allowing this or not allowing it, or growing this area or not growing it, yeah, they're the things that I worry about.
Do you get involved in, like you just said, in sort of the wider books of business, I suppose, and making decisions as to any rate increases or things like that? Is that part of what you do?
Yeah, so obviously we've got a pricing team as well. So pricing will do the actual rating side of it, but we'll always have an input into things that we think should have a rate increase due to performance issues or things like that. So yeah, we get involved in that, and also the drafting of the policy wordings, what cover we're going to give, endorsements we're going to apply, trades we're going to maybe now cover that we didn't cover before, and then you think, is it, we haven't got much experience in some of them, so is that gonna work out okay, or are we gonna fail? But I suppose that's part of the journey, isn't it? Maybe failing sometimes and recovering from it. So yeah, I
Here's
think
a
that's another
question.
angle, maybe learning to be a bit better at that that side.
Yeah, slowly though, and you've got to
Yeah.
go through the failures and come out of them, like you've just said. Here's a question for you, because this is something that gets me absolutely knotted up, and I'm sure it won't get you knotted up because I think you're probably much more detailed and mathematical than I'll ever be. Excel spreadsheets. I can't manage. I can't cope. I get myself tied up in knots. And before I know it, I think I'm having a heart attack and I've got physical pains and I'm angry with the world. Excel spreadsheets, how do you find them?
So I have a bit of a love and hate relationship with Excel spreadsheets. So I think I'm better than the basics. I'm quite good at certain things on there, but when it comes to VLOOKUPs, I don't do them very often. So when I have to do one, it literally takes me forever to do it, and then it doesn't work. And like say, you're like, oh, ready to smash the laptop. But yeah. So sometimes really well, get on really well with it, and then other times absolutely hate it.
VLOOKUP is something that I don't even attempt. I just go straight to my husband and say, Neil, can you help me? which he loves, obviously. When you're in a high pressured work scenario, and maybe along with some of the personal things that happens in everyone's lives, you've just explained some of them, what is it you do to bring yourself down, and does it always work?
Okay, so sometimes it doesn't always work, because sometimes I will sit there thinking about how I'm actually going to do something, and then I take so long to think about how I'm going to do it that I then convince myself that I'm not going to be able to do it. So sometimes I get to that point, and other times it's just a case of, I think, just walking away from it for a little while, taking a bit of a breather, maybe talking to someone else about the situation, and getting their idea or their view on it. I think that sometimes works for me. But I think, yeah, just the break in itself, I think if you just get that little break 5 minutes away or whatever it is you need, that tends to kind of reset your mind. Or just have a coffee, that always seems to help the situation. I do like in a stressful situation, if you go for a walk, I always find that really helps, especially if I've got a treadmill, but that's just not the same effect. I think you've got to get out and get the fresh air and the sunlight on your face whenever it's out.
Well, yeah, we live in the wrong country for that, but yes,
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think sometimes, and I'm trying to be really mindful of this, sometimes I can go out for the walk to take the break, but I spend the entire walk in my head
Yeah.
and but recognizing that I'm doing that when you're so caught up in it in my head is sometimes a bit of a revelation. Like, oh, that's what people mean when they say do it mindfully. Stop being in your head and just have 5 minutes where you're sort of in your body. And I think that's quite a useful analogy for me, one that I use quite
Yeah.
often.
See, I haven't mastered that yet. The thought of not thinking, if you see what I mean. Like I'm trying better to be like that. I woke up at 4:15 this morning, and literally thoughts zooming around my head about stupid things, about what to cook for dinner. And I've got a holiday that's booked for June that I booked last year that I really don't want to go on because it's in Spain. And I just think, I don't feel comfortable going yet. And TUI are allowing us to change it for free, which is really nice. But then all the prices have gone up, and then you just think, when do I go? What do I do? So all these stupid things are going through my head, and I don't think I fell back to sleep until 6, and then my alarm went off at 7. So yeah, I'm still trying to master. And but when I get like that, I try and just breathe in my mind, like I'm breathing and counting to like 5 in and 6 out and that kind of thing, and trying to do longer out breaths than in breaths, and that kind of, it does help sometimes. And then sometimes I kind of forget what I've been thinking about and kind of just calm. But sometimes it doesn't work. So yeah, I think I'm still on the journey.
I think so too, but I also think it's not about not thinking, it's about rediverting your thinking to something that you want to think about, that you want, that will be beneficial to think about. And I am a bit like you, so I get caught, I'll try and do some counting, and before I know it, I'm back on whatever's bothered me. Or if I focus really hard on my breathing when I'm really uptight, sometimes I end up hyperventilating and it makes the whole situation worse. But that's why I think walking's so good, because it's easier to be in your body and out of your mind, because you can do the 5 things you can hear, 4 things you can see, 3, that kind of game. And I often try to do which muscles are working as I'm walking. Like, can I feel the muscles in my feet working? Can I feel the muscles in my calves working? Which ones are tight? Which ones do I need to stretch? And then that goes into, I should be doing yoga every day. And oh my God, I'm a failure because I didn't, whatever. But there's always about 30 seconds where I'm like, okay, all right, that's fine. But at least I've stopped rumination 1 and I'm now onto something totally different. So sometimes I just find that distraction really helpful.
That is a good idea. I think when I've done meditation before, they focus on that, don't they? They'll say, feel how it feels in your legs and up through your body and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's along the same lines, isn't it?
It is. There are lots of, and I recommend to anyone listening, if you go on Spotify, there are lots of walking mindfulness walks. So you put your earphones in and go for a walk, and they talk you through whilst you're walking.
Good, yeah.
I can't walk at the speed you're supposed to. I still have to walk quickly because that's me. But, you can amend it to who you are and how you are and all of these things.
Yeah, it sounds good. I know I've got an Apple Watch. My husband bought me it for Christmas, and I've noticed recently on there's a fitness app that I've got, and on there's some things. It's a time to walk, and it's got different people, like celebrities, I think they are, who are probably doing similar things.
Fabulous. I shall ask for an Apple Watch for my birthday.
They are really good, actually.
Yeah. Well, one day. Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing with us your background and your journey in mindfulness and meditation and self-development. I think it's been really, really interesting. I very much appreciate your time and your support for the CCC project.
No worries. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Your reviews, shares and followership is incredibly valuable to us. If you'd like to know more about our work through Coffee, Calm and Connection and how we can support you, please email us at hello@coffeecalmconnection.org or follow us on social media. Thank you.